The boarding call crackled through the crowded gate at Chicago O'Hare. But Marcus Langston didn't flinch. He stood tall, his navy suit pristine, his leather briefcase slung over one shoulder. As the CEO of Horizon Tech, a rising star in Silicon Valley, he was used to the weight of eyes on him. But tonight, the stares felt different, sharper, heavier. He adjusted his tie and stepped toward the jet bridge, first-class boarding pass in hand. The flight to San Francisco was his last hurdle before a pivotal investor meeting, one that could cement his company's future. At the aircraft door, a flight attendant named Karen Wheeler greeted passengers with a practiced smile. Her blonde hair was pulled into a tight bun, her uniform crisp, but her eyes flicked over Marcus with a coldness that made his stomach tighten. "Boarding pass, please," she said, her tone clipped. Marcus handed it over, expecting the usual nod. Instead, Karen's lips pursed. "Sir, this is for first class. There must be a mistake." Marcus blinked, his calm demeanor unshaken. "No mistake. I booked it myself." He kept his voice steady, though the air around them seemed to thicken. Passengers behind him shifted, their murmurs rising. Karen's smile vanished. "I'm sorry, but first class is full. You'll need to take your assigned seat in economy." The words hit like a slap. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he held her gaze. "Check again. My name's on the manifest. Marcus Langston, seat 2A. Karen didn't move. Her eyes narrowed, and she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. "Sir, I'm not sure how you got this pass, but you're not on my list. Step aside." The cabin went quiet. Every head turned. A white man in a rumpled suit behind Marcus scoffed, muttering, "Just move, buddy." Marcus's pulse raced, but he stood his ground. He wasn't new to the subtle dismissals, the assumptions, but this was different. This was blatant. "I'm not moving," he said, loud enough for the cabin to hear. "I paid for that seat. I belong there." Karen's face flushed red. "Security," she snapped, her hand already on her radio. Two uniformed officers appeared at the aircraft door, their presence amplifying the tension. Passengers gasped, phones slipping out to record. Marcus's heart pounded, but he didn't back down. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice low but firm. "Check the system." Karen ignored him, gesturing to the officers. "Escort this man off the plane." The taller officer hesitated, glancing at Marcus's boarding pass, still clutched in Karen's hand. "Ma'am, let's verify the ticket first," he suggested, but Karen cut him off. "I said, remove him." The cabin erupted in whispers. A young black woman in a nearby seat stood up, her voice sharp. "This is ridiculous. Let him sit." Others nodded, their murmurs turning to protests. Marcus felt a surge of gratitude, but his focus stayed on Karen. Her eyes burned with something he recognized, not just authority, but prejudice. He'd seen it before, in boardrooms and backrooms, but never so raw, so public. As the officers stepped closer, Marcus raised a hand. "Wait. I want everyone here to know what's happening. I'm Marcus Langston, CEO of Horizon Tech. I earned that seat, same as anyone else. If you remove me, you're not just removing a passenger, you're removing my dignity." His words hung heavy, and for a moment, even Karen faltered. But she doubled down, her voice icy. "You're causing a disturbance. Leave now, or you'll be arrested." The standoff stretched, every second electric. Marcus's mind raced. He could fight this here, risk escalation, or find another way. But he knew one thing: this wasn't just about a seat. It was about every time he'd been questioned, dismissed, or pushed aside because of his skin. And he wasn't going to let it slide. Not tonight. Marcus's words echoed in the cabin, and the air seemed to crackle with defiance. The passengers' murmurs grew louder, a mix of support and unease. The young black woman who'd spoken of her name tag read Talia, flight attendant trainee, pushed forward, her eyes blazing. Check the manifest. Karen. Now. Her voice cut through the tension, and for the first time, Karen's composure cracked. She fumbled with her tablet, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through the passenger list. Marcus stood still, his briefcase heavy in his grip, his gaze locked on Karen. The officers hovered, unsure, their hands resting on their belts. The taller one, Officer Daniels, spoke softly. Ma'am, let's resolve this quickly. Check the system. Karen shot him a glare, but tapped the screen. Her face paled. There's no Marcus Langston in first class, she stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. Talia stepped closer, peering over Karen's shoulder. That's not true, she said, her tone sharp. I saw the manifest before boarding. He's in 2A. You're overriding the system. The accusation hung like a guillotine. Passengers gasped, and a man in a hoodie near the back shouted, She's lying. Karen's eyes darted around, searching for an ally, but the cabin was turning against her. Marcus seized the moment. If I'm not on the list, show me, he said, his voice calm but unyielding. Karen hesitated, her fingers frozen on the tablet. Talia didn't wait. She snatched the device, her movement swift, and held it up for all to see. Here, she said, pointing to the screen. Marcus Langston, seat 2A, confirmed. The cabin erupted in shouts. Let him sit. This is racism. Karen's face twisted, caught in her own lie. It's a glitch, she insisted, but her voice was weak. Marcus stepped closer, his presence commanding. A glitch. Or did you decide I didn't belong because of how I look? The question was a blade, and Karen flinched. The officers exchanged glances, and Daniel spoke up. Ma'am, if he's on the manifest, he boards. Step aside. But Karen wasn't done. She straightened, her voice rising. This is my flight, and I say who boards first class. The arrogance in her tone was a spark in a powder keg. Talia shook her head, her voice low but fierce. You're wrong, Karen. And you're about to find out how wrong. Marcus felt the tide shifting. He glanced at Talia, grateful for her courage, then back at Karen. You've got one chance to fix this, he said. Check the system again, or I'll make sure everyone knows what's happening here. His words weren't a threat, they were a promise. Karen's eyes widened, but she didn't move. Instead, she doubled down. You're not sitting in first class, she spat, her voice dripping with venom. I don't care who you are. The cabin exploded in outrage. Phones were out, recording every word, every gesture. A white woman in a business suit stood up, her voice trembling but firm. This is unacceptable. I'm filing a complaint with the airline. Others joined in, their voices a chorus of dissent. Marcus's heart raced, but he kept his cool. He knew this wasn't just about him, Anna Maria, it was about every person who'd been judged, dismissed, or dehumanized. He pulled out his phone, opened the Horizon Tech app, and started a live stream. This is Marcus Langston, CEO of Horizon Tech, being denied my first-class seat for no reason other than the color of my skin, he said, his voice steady. The cabin cheered, and Karen's face went white. Talia leaned in, whispering to Marcus, I've got your back. Keep going. She handed him the tablet, now showing his name in bold. Marcus held it up for the camera, his voice rising. This is the truth. And it's going viral. The stream's viewer count skyrocketed. Comments flooding in. This is disgusting. Sue the airline. We're with you. Marcus. Karen's authority was crumbling, but she wasn't ready to surrender. She grabbed her radio, her voice shaking. I need backup. Now. The cabin braced for what came next, the tension so thick it could choke. Marcus stood tall, his eyes never leaving Karen's. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The cabin was a pressure cooker, every eye on Marcus and Karen. His live stream was climbing past 10,000 viewers, the comments a storm of outrage and support. Karen's radio crackled, but no backup came. The officers, Daniels and his partner, stood frozen, sensing the tide had turned. Talia, the trainee, was now a force, her presence bolstering Marcus. She crossed her arms, staring Karen down. You're done, Karen. This isn't your call anymore. Karen's face was a mask of fury and fear. You're out of line, Talia. She snapped, but her voice trembled. She clutched the tablet like a shield, her knuckles white. Marcus stepped forward, his voice calm but piercing. You had a choice. You could have checked the system, admitted your mistake. Instead, you dug in. Why? The question hung heavy, and the cabin held its breath. Karen's lips parted, but no words came. A passenger, an older black man with gray hair, stood up. I'll tell you why, he said, his voice steady. I've seen this my whole life. It's not about a seat. It's about power. And she thinks she's got it over you. His words were a spark, igniting more shouts of agreement. Karen's eyes darted to the officers, but Daniels shook his head. Ma'am, you need to stand down. He's got the right to board. Karen's jaw clenched, and she took a step toward Marcus, her voice low and venomous. You think you can humiliate me? I've been with this airline 20 years. You're nobody. The words were a mistake. The cabin roared, passengers on their feet. Nobody. Talia shot back, her voice cutting like a knife. He's a CEO? Karen. Who are you? The question landed like a punch, and Karen staggered back, her authority unraveling. Marcus's live stream was now at 20,000 viewers. The comments a tidal wave. Fire her. This is systemic. Marcus raised a hand, silencing the crowd. I don't want her fired, he said, his voice steady but resonant. I want accountability. I want her to admit what she did and why. The cabin went quiet, every eye on Karen. She froze, her face a mix of defiance and panic. I was following protocol, she stammered, but no one bought it. Talia stepped forward, her voice fierce. Protocol doesn't erase a passenger from the manifest. You did that. Own it. Karen's eyes flicked to the tablet, then back to Marcus. For a moment, it seemed she might break. But then her radio crackled, and a voice cut through. Karen, stand down. Ground crew's coming. The cabin doors opened, and a woman in a sharp blazer stormed in. Lydia Harper, the airline's regional manager. Her presence was electric, her eyes scanning the scene. What's going on here? She demanded. Talia didn't hesitate. Karen's denying a passenger his seat based on nothing but bias. Check the manifest. Lydia took the tablet, her face hardening as she saw Marcus's name. She turned to Karen, her voice low. Explain this. Now. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came. The cabin was a powder keg, and Lydia knew it. She turned to Marcus, her tone professional but warm. "Mr. Langston, I apologize. You're in 2A. Please take your seat." Marcus nodded, but he didn't move. "I'll sit when she admits what she did," he said, pointing at Karen. The cabin cheered, phone still recording. Lydia's eyes narrowed at Karen, who was shrinking under the weight of the moment. "Karen," Lydia said, her voice like steel, "speak, or you're off this flight." Karen's lips trembled, but she shook her head. "I did nothing wrong," she whispered. The cabin erupted again, and Lydia raised a hand. "Enough. Karen, you're grounded pending investigation. Officers, escort her off." Daniels nodded, stepping forward, but Karen didn't move. Her eyes locked on Marcus, burning with resentment. "You think you've won?" she hissed, barely audible. Marcus met her gaze, unflinching. "This isn't about winning. It's about right and wrong." The words landed like a verdict, and Karen's defiance crumbled. As the officers led her away, the cabin exploded in applause, but Marcus felt no joy. This was only the beginning. Karen's exit was a spectacle. Her head bowed as the officers escorted her down the jet bridge. The cabin buzzed with adrenaline, passengers clapping, some shouting encouragement to Marcus. He stood in the aisle, his heart still racing, the weight of the moment sinking in. His live stream was now at 50,000 viewers, trending across platforms with hashtags like Justice for Marcus and Airline Racism. Talia handed him his boarding pass, her eyes fierce with pride. "You did that," she said. Marcus nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He took his seat in 2A, the plush leather a stark contrast to the chaos he'd just endured. Lydia, the regional manager, approached, her face apologetic. "Mr. Langston, I'm deeply sorry. This is unacceptable, and we'll investigate fully." Marcus met her gaze, his voice calm but firm. "I don't want promises. I want change. This isn't just about me." Lydia nodded, her expression somber. "I understand. We'll make this right." But Marcus wasn't convinced. He'd heard corporate apologies before polished words that rarely led to action. As the plane taxied, he opened his phone, the live stream still rolling. "This isn't over," he told his audience. "This is bigger than one flight, one seat. It's about dignity. Stay with me." The flight was tense, the cabin alive with whispers. Passengers approached Marcus, offering support. The older black man from earlier, who introduced himself as Reverend Carter, sat beside him. "Son, you stood tall tonight," he said, his voice warm. "But this fight, it's long. You ready for it?" Marcus nodded, though the weight of those words settled deep. He was ready, but he knew the cost. By the time the plane landed in San Francisco, the story had exploded. News outlets were picking up the live stream, and Horizon Tech stock was trending. Marcus's phone buzzed with messages from his team, investors, and even strangers. "You're a hero," one read. "Sue them," said another. But Marcus wasn't thinking about lawsuits. He was thinking about the system that let this happen and how to dismantle it. At the gate, reporters were waiting, their cameras flashing as Marcus stepped off the plane. Talia was at his side, her trainee badge gleaming. "They want a statement," she said, nodding at the press. Marcus took a deep breath, his mind racing. He could play it safe, let the airline handle it, or he could push harder. He chose the latter. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice steady as the cameras rolled. "Tonight, I was denied my seat because of the color of my skin. This isn't just about might, it's about every person who's been judged before they're known. I'm calling on Unity Airlines to not just investigate, but to act. Train your staff. Change your policies. Or we'll change them for you. The crowd cheered, and Talia's smile was fierce. Behind the scenes, Unity Airlines was scrambling. Karen's actions had sparked a PR nightmare, and social media was relentless. Boycott Unity trended nationwide, and the airline's stock plummeted. In a boardroom in Dallas, executives watched Marcus's statement, their faces grim. He's a CEO? One muttered. He's got influence. This could ruin us. Back in San Francisco, Marcus met with his legal team. They urged him to sue, but he hesitated. A lawsuit's one battle, he said. I want the war. His lawyer, a sharp woman named Priya Sharma, nodded. Then we go public. Amplify the story. Force their hand. Marcus agreed, and they drafted a plan, a press conference, a coalition of activists, and a demand for systemic change. As Marcus prepared, he got a call from Talia. Karen's been suspended, she said, her voice urgent. But there's more. I found records of other passengers. Same story. She's done this before. Marcus's blood ran cold. This wasn't a one-off. It was a pattern, and he was going to expose it. The San Francisco press conference was a media frenzy. Marcus stood at a podium, flanked by Talia, Reverend Carter, and Priya. Behind them, a banner read "Justice in the Skies." Cameras flashed, and the room buzzed with anticipation. Marcus's suit was sharp, but his eyes carried the weight of the past 24 hours. He leaned into the microphone, his voice steady but charged. Unity Airlines tried to erase me from their manifest, he began. But they can't erase the truth. This wasn't a mistake, it was discrimination. And it's not just me. We've uncovered a pattern of passengers, mostly people of color, denied their rights on Unity flights. This ends now. The room erupted in applause, and Talia stepped forward, holding up a stack of documents. These are complaints, buried by the airline, she said. We're making them public. The documents were damning dozens of cases, stretching back years, of passengers denied seats, harassed, or removed, all linked to Karen and a handful of other staff. The story went viral, and Unity's stock tanked further. Protests erupted outside their headquarters, with signs reading "No more excuses" and "Fly equal." Marcus's phone buzzed nonstop, his inbox flooded with support and threats alike. Unity issued a statement, calling Karen's actions an isolated incident and promising a thorough investigation. But Marcus wasn't buying it. He met with activists, including a young organizer named Jamal Wright, who'd been tracking airline discrimination for years. This is bigger than Unity, Jamal said. It's the industry. They hide behind policy to protect their own. Marcus nodded, his resolve hardening. Then we take on the industry. Priya's team dug deeper, uncovering emails between Karen and a supervisor, hinting at a culture of bias at Unity. One email read, "Handle problem passengers discreetly." The phrase sent chills down Marcus's spine. He shared it with the press, and the backlash was swift. Unity's CEO, Richard Hale, was forced to address the crisis on national TV. "We're committed to diversity," he said, but his words felt hollow, and the public wasn't fooled. Marcus's investor meeting, originally the focus of his trip, became a platform. He pitched Horizon Tech's VisionTech for equity, tools to expose systemic bias, but tied it to his experience. "I'm building a future where no one's judged by their skin," he told the investors. They were captivated, and the funding poured in, pushing Horizon's valuation to new heights. But the fight was far from over. Karen, now suspended, gave an interview to a fringe outlet, claiming she was set up and that Marcus had played the race card. The interview sparked a firestorm, with some rallying to her defense, calling Marcus a troublemaker. The backlash stung, but Marcus stayed focused. He and Talia met with other victims, forming a coalition to demand reform. One night, Marcus got a call from Lydia, the regional manager. "I'm risking my job," she said, her voice low. "But you need to know Karen's not alone. There's a group of staff, a clique, pushing this bias. I'm gathering evidence, but it's dangerous." Marcus's heart raced. This was bigger than he'd thought, a network within Unity, operating in the shadows. As the coalition grew, so did the pressure on Unity. Protests spread to major airports, and bookings plummeted. Marcus's live stream from the flight was replayed on every major network. The image of that crumpled boarding pass, "Justice Denied," becoming a symbol of the fight. But Marcus knew the real battle was ahead, exposing the rot and building something better. Unity Airlines was hemorrhaging. By week's end, their stock had dropped 30%, and major sponsors were pulling out. Marcus's coalition, now called Fly Equal, was relentless, organizing boycotts and sharing victim stories online. The hashtag #FlyEqual was everywhere, amplified by celebrities and influencers. Marcus, Talia, and Jamal worked around the clock, their makeshift headquarters in a San Francisco community center buzzing with volunteers. Lydia's tip about the clique within Unity proved explosive. She smuggled out internal memos, revealing a group of employees who'd been flagged for bias but protected by lax oversight. Karen was their ringleader, her 20 years of service shielding her from accountability. The memos were leaked to the press, and Unity's board was cornered. Richard Hale, the CEO, announced a restructuring to save face. But it was too little, too late. Marcus faced mounting pressure. Hate mail poured in, accusing him of destroying jobs and dividing the country. One message, anonymous but chilling, read, "You'll regret this." Priya urged him to hire security, but Marcus refused. "I'm not hiding," he said. "That's what they want." Still, he felt the weight of every step, every public appearance. Talia, meanwhile, was a rising star. Her role in exposing Karen had earned her respect, but also enemies. She was demoted to ground crew, a clear retaliation, but she didn't back down. "I'm in this for the long haul," she told Marcus, her eyes fierce. Together, they planned a major rally at Chicago O'Hare, where it all began. Reverend Carter joined, bringing his congregation, and Jamal mobilized national activists. The rally was a powder keg. Thousands gathered, their signs a sea of demands and airline racism. "Fire the clique." Marcus took the stage, his voice booming. "This isn't just about one flight. It's about every time we're told we don't belong. We're not asking for changery, demanding it." The crowd roared, but across the terminal, a counter-protest formed, chanting, "Support our workers." The tension was palpable, and police lined the barriers. Mid-speech, Marcus got a text from Lydia, "Check your email." Now. He stepped off the stage, heart pounding, and opened a file she'd sent an audio recording of Karen and her supervisor, discussing how to manage passengers like Marcus. "Keep them out of first class," the supervisor said. "It's about image." Karen's voice was clear, "I know the type. They don't fit." Marcus shared the audio with the coalition, and they released it immediately. The fallout was catastrophic for Unity. News anchors played the clip on loop, and the FAA launched an investigation. Unity's board called an emergency meeting, and whispers of bankruptcy circulated. Marcus felt a flicker of triumph, but it was bittersweet. The system was crumbling, but at what cost? That night, he met with Reverend Carter at a diner. The older man sipped coffee, his eyes kind but piercing. "You're shaking things up, son. But change hurts. You ready for the pushback?" Marcus nodded, though doubt gnawed at him. "I have to be," he said. "People are counting on me." Carter smiled. "They're counting on you to stay human. Don't lose that." The next morning, Unity's board made a desperate move. They fired Karen and 3 others from the clique, hoping to quell the storm. But it wasn't enough. Fly Equal demanded a public apology, diversity training, and a board overhaul. Marcus led a delegation to Unity's headquarters, where Richard Hale met them, his face haggard. "We're listening," he said, but Marcus cut him off. "Listening's not enough. Act." As the meeting ended, Marcus's phone buzzed. A major investor had pulled out of Unity, citing ethical concerns. The airline was on its knees, and Marcus knew Fly Equal had the power to push it over the edge. But he also knew this was bigger than one company. The fight was for every passenger, every person who'd been told they didn't belong. Unity Airlines was in freefall. The leaked audio had sealed their fate, and by the end of the week, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The news hit like a shockwave, dominating headlines and sparking debates about corporate accountability. Marcus's coalition, Fly Equal, was credited or blamed, depending on the outlet for the collapse. Social media was a battlefield, with Fly Equal supporters clashing against those claiming Marcus had gone too far. Marcus felt the weight of it all. He stood in his San Francisco office, staring at the city skyline, his mind racing. Horizon Tech was thriving, its mission now tied to the fight for equity. But the personal toll was heavy. Threats had escalated, and Priya insisted on security for the next rally. Marcus reluctantly agreed, but he refused to let fear dictate his path. Talia, now a full-time activist, was relentless. She'd quit Unity after her demotion, joining Fly Equal as a co-leader. "We're not done," she told Marcus, her voice fierce. "Other airlines are watching. We set the precedent." She was right. Reports surfaced of similar incidents at rival carriers, and Fly Equal's inbox was flooded with stories from passengers nationwide. The coalition planned a national campaign, targeting the airline industry's systemic issues. Jamal, the organizer, brought data. People of color were disproportionately flagged as disruptive across major carriers. "It's coded language," he said. "They use policy to hide bias." Marcus nodded, his resolve stealing. "Then we rewrite the policy." The next blow came unexpectedly. A whistleblower from Unity's HR department, a woman named Sarah Nguyen, contacted Marcus. "I've got something you need to see," she said, her voice shaky. She sent a file internal training materials that encouraged staff to profile passengers based on appearance. The language was subtle but clear. "Watch for passengers who don't match the expected demographic." Marcus's blood boiled. This wasn't just Karen. It was the system. Fly Equal released the materials, and the backlash was swift. The FAA expanded its investigation, and Congress called for hearings. Marcus testified, his voice steady as he recounted his experience. "This isn't about one flight," he said. "It's about a culture that devalues people based on skin color. We can do better." The room was silent, lawmakers visibly moved. But the victory was bittersweet. Unity's bankruptcy left thousands jobless, and some blamed Marcus. A viral op-ed called him a wrecking ball, accusing him of destroying livelihoods. At a rally in Atlanta, Counter-protesters heckled him, shouting, "You cost us our jobs." Marcus took the stage, his heart heavy. "I didn't want this," he said. "I wanted fairness. But change isn't clean. It's messy, and it hurts. I'm sorry for the pain, but I'm not sorry for the fight." The crowd roared, but Marcus felt the sting of division. Reverend Carter pulled him aside after. "You can't please everyone," he said. "Focus on the ones who need you." Marcus nodded, but the doubt lingered. Had he pushed too hard? Talia, ever the firebrand, kept him grounded. "You're not the villain," she said. "They want you to feel like one. Keep going." Together, they planned a summit, inviting airline CEOs, activists, and passengers to draft industry-wide reforms. The summit was a gamble. Unity's collapse had spooked the industry, but Marcus saw no other way. As the summit approached, Lydia reached out again. "I'm testifying," she said. "I've got more evidence. Executives knew about the clique and did nothing." Her courage stunned Marcus. "You're risking everything," he said. Lydia laughed, a bitter edge to it. "So are you." The summit was set for Chicago, a symbolic return to where it began. Marcus stood at the airport, staring at the terminal where Karen had tried to erase him. The crumpled boarding pass from that night, with its bold "Justice Denied," was now framed in Fly equals Officia, reminder of why they fought. Marcus took a deep breath, ready for the next battle. The Chicago summit was a turning point. The conference hall buzzed with tension. Airline executives seated alongside activists, passengers, and lawmakers. Marcus stood at the podium, his presence commanding. Behind him, Talia, Jamal, Reverend Carter, and Lydia formed a united front. The banner overhead read, "Fly Equal, a new standard." Marcus's voice was steady, but his words carried the weight of a movement. "We're here because one flight exposed a truth," he began. "The airline industry has failed its passengers. Not just me, but countless others, judged before they could board. Today, we're not asking for change or rebuilding it." The room erupted in applause, though some executives shifted uncomfortably. Lydia testified first, her evidence devastating: emails, training manuals, and recorded calls proving Unity's leadership had ignored systemic bias. "They knew," she said, her voice breaking. "And they let it happen." The room was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Other whistleblowers followed, from rival airlines, their stories echoing Marcus's. Talia presented Fly equals demands, mandatory diversity training, transparent complaint processes, and independent oversight. "This isn't optional," she said, her eyes fierce. "It's the future." Jamal shared data, showing how bias cost airlines trust and revenue. "You can't afford to ignore this," he warned. The executives were defensive, but the pressure was undeniable. With Unity's collapse as a warning, several agreed to pilot reforms. Delta and American Airlines signed on, committing to Fly equal standards. It wasn't a full victory, but it was a start. Marcus felt a flicker of hope, though he knew the fight was far from over. After the summit, Marcus met with a young black girl who'd been at the rally, her eyes wide with admiration. "I want to be like you," she said. "How do I do it?" Marcus knelt, his voice soft. "You're already enough. Just keep standing up, even when it's hard." Her smile was a reminder of why he fought not for himself, but for her, for everyone who'd been told they didn't belong. Unity's bankruptcy was finalized, its assets sold off. Karen and her clique faced lawsuits, their careers over. But Marcus didn't celebrate. "This isn't about punishment," he told Priya. "It's about progress." Fly Equal grew, becoming a national force, with chapters in every major city. Talia led training programs. Jamal built tech to track complaints, and Reverend Carter mentored young activists. Marcus returned to Horizon Tech, his company now a beacon for equity. They launched an app, inspired by his live stream, letting passengers report discrimination in real time. It was a hit, downloaded millions of times. Investors poured in, seeing the power of a mission-driven company. One night, Marcus visited the FlyEqual office, where the framed boarding pass hung. Justice denied was a scar, but also a spark. He thought of Karen, not with anger, but with clarity. She was a product of a broken system, one they were rebuilding. He thought of Talia, Lydia, Jamal, Carter, the people who'd stood with him. And he thought of that girl at the summit, her future brighter because of their fight. As he stepped outside, the Chicago skyline glowed. The fight wasn't over, but Marcus felt a quiet strength. He'd been denied a seat, but he'd claimed something bigger, a voice, a movement, a chance to change the world. And he wasn't stopping. Not now. Not ever.